as dancers, if you're getting any feedback from a teacher, it can be hard to take sometimes. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you can see it as an opportunity that you have to get better, that's exciting. And you have to see it as that and do whatever you need to do to make that exciting and fulfilling and keep going. Focus on what is in front of you. And eventually you're going to roll that snowball over time and you're going to have a huge mountain by the end of it. You're not even going to realize it until you look back and you're like, wow, the amount of work that I put in was a lot. But I didn't see it as work because I was enjoying the process. Hi, everyone. My name is Priscilla Piper, and welcome to the Decision to Dance podcast. I am so excited that you all are here. I have had this topic in mind of focusing on loving the game versus focusing on the outcome for quite some time. And I really felt compelled to speak on this. And I'm so glad to finally have this episode out. I really do believe that this perspective and this framework has helped me so much. And I would love more than anything to share my approach to anybody that is interested. I don't see many people talking about it, so I wanted to start the conversation. And I appreciate you all. I hope you enjoy it. And let's go ahead and get into today's episode. So, as some of you probably know, I do listen to a lot of personal development podcasts, and the one that I listen to pretty much daily is the Gary V audio experience. And if you don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, he talks a lot about personal development, branding, social media, marketing, business. And I really enjoy his approach and how upfront he is with what he talks about. And so when I was listening to his episode that day, I was driving in my car and he said something that really struck me. And he mentioned how he enjoys trying to win versus actually winning. And I had a huge light bulb moment go off in my head as I was driving, listening to that episode. And I was like, oh, that's why I have been able to learn and grow as much as I have, focusing on trying to win as a dancer versus focusing on winning. I've been able to get to where I am. And you might be like, well, Priscilla, how do you know? Let me tell you. So when I returned to dance, which would have been almost 6 years ago now, I returned to dance in August of 2019. I was so intentional about my goals. And I told myself, my goal is to become the best dancer that I can possibly be for myself. And along that same line was, I want to become the dancer that I know that I am. For so long, I felt like I wasn't able to execute and be the dancer that I knew that I was in my heart and in my head. So that has been my focus. I was extremely intentional about not setting a goal of dancing professionally. I was intentional about not focusing on moving to LA or a major dance city. I was not focused on getting signed by an agent. Intentionally did not focus on those goals and set those goals because I knew, for one, those goals at the time were so incredibly far out of reach for me that I knew I was going to hate the process so much because I had a long way to go and I was not going to enjoy that at all if I was only focused on dancing professionally. So I had to focus on enjoying dance for myself and enjoying the process of learning and enjoying the process of trying to get better. And I did that because when I grew up dancing, especially in my teenage years, I felt like I fell out of that love for the process because I was so focused on winning. I was a competitive dancer and I became focused on it. And I think it's because I put my self worth in the hands of other people and I wanted other people to validate me. And so if the judges at the competition think I'm a good dancer, then I must be a good dancer. But if they think I'm an average dancer, then I must be an average dancer. And it got to a point where I was so like focused and like holding on to dear life to these goals and achievements I was hoping to win that I really was pushing myself way too hard and I was not enjoying the process at all. I felt like I was just losing my sense of self. And that carried over into when I was trying to try out for college dance teams, really pushed myself way too much and it didn't go well. I didn't make it, okay? and and I really lost that desire to learn and that desire to grow and instead I was focusing on the end goal. And I feel like my natural state is to be in that state of I'm there to learn, I'm there to grow, tell me what I'm doing wrong, let's see what how I can make it better and become better. And so because of all of that, I just felt like I didn't know who I was anymore and really cared too much about other people validating me as a dancer, which is why I was so intentional about setting those goals when I returned to dance. I didn't want to hate dance again. And so that meant that I was getting into a lot of classes when I returned, and to the point where people recognized that, and teachers were like, man, you really must love to train because you are training so much. And in my head, I'm just like, well, I just love to dance. I'm just trying to take advantage of the time and the opportunities that I have. And I'm just trying to learn as much as I can. And that meant that I did put myself in styles and in classes that were definitely not up my alley at all. And it was hard, but I was eager to learn and I cared more about that than anything else. And so that carried with me into when the pandemic happened and people were taking classes online. I saw the opportunity to learn from teachers that I wouldn't be able to take from in person weekly as I would be able to online for the first time ever. So I was taking a lot of online classes, and that later turned into online intensives, which then turned into in person intensives. And I never saw it as I'm going to take a bunch of classes, I'm going to take a bunch of intensives. That was not my focus at all. I was just like eager to get better and I saw how other people were willing to provide their insight and their expertise to help other people improve as dancers. So I was like, I'm going to take advantage of that for sure. And it definitely worked. But I did have a moment last year where I realized that other people have taken note that there is a genuine love for dance, but also to learn from other people and to apply correction and to get better. And when I realized that, I was like, where has that desire come from? Like I I feel like I've always been this way, but when did that start and how has that been the case? So I was thinking about it and then I recalled a conversation that I had with my mom a few years ago when I returned to dance. I was in between classes and I called her just actually thanking her for putting me into dance classes as a kid. And we were talking and she was telling me about the story of when I came out of ballet class. And so she's describing this story to me and my ballet teacher growing up, he was very strict. And I don't think that environment was necessarily what everyone wanted as a kid, but I personally loved it. I loved it. I loved the professionalism. I loved the standards that we were held to. I loved how there was no messing around. There was no time for chit-chatting. You were there to learn and you were there to get better. And that was that. I loved it. And so anyway, I come out of class and my mom is like, "How was ballet class today?" And so I tell her, "My teacher didn't give me a critique in class today, so he must not like me anymore." And my mom in her head is like, "Child, like, what is wrong with you? You should be thankful that you didn't get a critique that day." Oh my gosh. And so, we're laughing about it on the phone, and it's funny to think about now because I'm like, I really have always been that way. And I do remember he really did give a critique, at least one, to me at least in every single class. So if there wasn't a critique that he gave that day, I must have felt like something was wrong. And hopefully I wasn't looking for his approval. It sounds like I was a little bit, but I feel like that is an example of that I have always been that way, at least around 10 years old, which was when that story occurred. So then I'm thinking even more like, okay, that was 10, but like, what about prior to that? Have I always been this way? And I was watching home videos of me in a dance class. It was one of my first dance classes because I hadn't turned 3 years old yet, and I started dancing around that time. And so we're in our leotards and our tights, and we individually go up to the ballet bar to do arabesques. And my mom is filming me from outside the room through the window. And I go to the bar and I do my arabesque, which, in my opinion, was pretty good as a not even 3 year old yet. And I'm doing my arabesque and I'm looking back at my leg and my foot, and you can see how I'm like looking at my leg and I'm like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? I want to do it right. I want to do it right. And then I look up at my instructor and I don't say anything, but I just look up at her. And after I watched that whole interaction, I was like, I think I've always been this way. And you could be like, okay, Priscilla, you don't know what was going through your 3-year-old head, right? Like, there's no way. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. But I also just know myself so well. And also in that class, I was just having the time of my freaking life. And you can tell in that class, like, literally the biggest smile on my face ever. And you can just tell, like, I loved it so much. And so when I watched that, I'm like, I feel like I've always been this way. So I really don't have an explanation. It's just kind of been in my bones and in my heart ever since I can remember. I just genuinely love the process of trying to get better as a dancer, trying to become the dancer that I know that I have always been, trying to become the best dancer that I can possibly be, no matter if I get there or not. But it really has gotten me so far, and it's helped me to enjoy the experience of dancing, and it allows me to feel like myself at the end of the day. And honestly, that's kind of the framework of how I live my life. I bring it into many things that I do, and I am always wanting to get better. I do think that is the dancer in me. That's how I explain it to people. I don't like getting feedback. I don't like being told when I do things wrong. I don't like admitting when I'm wrong. I don't like admitting when I made a mistake. But I know at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to get better if I admit that and take the perspective and advice from other people if they're telling me a different way that I can do something. So I do that in so many different ways, especially in any job that I have. And it's just made me improve in everything that I've done. Another podcast that I was listening to earlier this year was The Diary of a CEO by Steven Bartlett. And he had somebody on his show that he was interviewing. His name is Chase Hughes, who is a leading expert in human behavior. And he said something that I thought was very profound. He said, achieving goals is the byproduct of good habits. So therefore, if I have good habits, then I will probably achieve my goals. So if I see that as a dancer, if I have good habits as a dancer, then I am very likely to achieve my goals as a dancer. And he uses the word habit, but I think you can break that down even more. So, for example, as a dancer, if my goal is to become the best dancer that I can possibly be for myself, and that could mean a lot of different things. There's different types of dancing, different styles, there's choreography, there's freestyling, there's so many different things that you can focus on. But I want to be good at all of it because I love all of it. I love watching all of it too. So for me, I know that if I'm not good at retaining choreography, if I'm not good at being clean, if I'm not good at using my face and telling a story, if I can't do those things, if I'm not good at them, then it's going to be very hard for me to achieve my goal of becoming the best possible dancer that I can possibly be, right? I mean, if I'm so focused on here and I'm losing the connection and the foundation, then I'm not going to get there. You have to have a solid foundation to get to the top of the pyramid. That's the only way that it works. So, if I focus on getting from point A to point B, if I'm focused on getting better at retaining choreography, if I can figure that out for myself, or if I can seek out courses and videos that are out there to help me get better, I'm going to do that. And if I'm going to be doing that, I'm going to be mindful about how I'm approaching this. I'm going to focus on improving in this area because I know in the long run that's going to help me. So I'm focusing on point A to point B. Then once I get to point B, I'm going to do the same thing to get from point B to point C, and so on and so forth until I get to the end of the alphabet. And then once I get to the end of the alphabet, I'm going to keep going. And so to me, it makes absolute sense that I will eventually achieve my goal of becoming the best dancer I can possibly be if I'm focusing on where I'm lacking and where I need improvement. And if you don't, if you're so focused on the achievement and the end goal, and if you can remove that from the equation, then it's going to be much easier and much enjoyable during the process. If you think about it, if you have an equation and you have your end result that you're trying to get, you're not going to get there unless you do the math. You're not going to do that. It doesn't make any sense. So same thing as a dancer. You're not getting to the top if you don't have a solid foundation. So I am more likely to achieve my goals if I'm focused on good habits, if I'm focused on point A to point B, if I can assess where I'm lacking and focus on what I have in front of me, eventually over time, I'm going to get there. No doubt in my mind. And I feel the same way for you and anybody else who is listening. And that's why I'm talking about it, because I think as dancers, it's so easy to focus on the achievement, so focused on the end goal that we're losing sight of that whole process and doing our best to try to enjoy the process. Okay. I know it's hard. I know it is. And especially if you're getting any feedback from a teacher, it can be hard to take sometimes. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I love when people tell me I'm not doing well, especially when it feels like it's a personal comment or if it's a critique that stems from something personal. It doesn't feel good. I get it. I do. But if you can see it as an opportunity that you have to get better, that's exciting. That is exciting. And you have to see it as that and do whatever you need to do to make that exciting and fulfilling and continue that eagerness to learn and to seek out resources and to seek out perspective and keep going. Focus on what is in front of you. And eventually you're going to roll that snowball over time and you're going to have a huge mountain by the end of it. And you're not even going to realize it until you look back and you're like, wow, the amount of work that I put in was a lot. But I didn't see it as work because I was enjoying the process. And if you think about like the Rockettes, they have their auditions in April. You have people that go to those auditions every single year. They are training throughout that entire year. And if they don't make it, they're going back and they're working again. And they're figuring out where they're lacking. What did I not do well? And sometimes, of course, with those auditions, with any audition, it's sometimes beyond your control and your ability. But there's always something to work on. So, what are those things? And those dancers are focusing on it. And it's okay to have an end goal. Actually, I think it's really good to have goals that you're working towards, to document those goals, to measure out those goals. I think it's really good and important to not lose sight of what that end goal is. But I don't necessarily think it's great to have it right in your face all of the time. And you have to enjoy the 364 days left of the year when you're not at that audition. Granted, I do believe that that audition is like a 3-day thing. So, okay, 362 days, right? That you are training and focusing on this. And you have to enjoy it, right? You don't want to be miserable all of those other days of the year. And also, if you think about the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, the docuseries that just came out again recently, those dancers are doing the same thing as well. Focused on an end goal, eyes on the prize for sure. But you got to enjoy the other days of the year where you're training and you're focusing on improving. And you have to enjoy it. Otherwise, you're going to hate it and you're going to get burnt out and you're going to want to quit. And trust me, I have been there. And I don't want anyone else to get there, which is why I'm talking about this. And if you are a professional, I also think this is important as well. And I know that if I was dancing professionally, this is how I would have to approach this. I would have to approach this in a way of wanting to learn, wanting to get better, and connecting with other people, learning from them. But really, that's nothing different from what I've already been doing. You would just be in different situations than others who aren't dancing professionally. And you could say, well, Priscilla, I do enjoy the process. And maybe you do. And if you do, that's incredible. And if you say that, but in the back of your head, you're thinking, I do, but then I would really encourage you to ask yourself, why do you do this? Right? It really does go back to that question. Why do I make the decision to dance? You have to think about the longevity, right? Think about not just the one thing you're focused on, the job, the audition, whatever it is. You have to think about why you dance as well. Because when you ask yourself that question, it makes all of this so much easier and it makes the approach easier as well and more authentic, in my opinion. And because of that, I know that if I was doing this professionally, I would have to have that approach. I feel like I'd have to go to an audition and be like, let me show up and share my love and share my capabilities and my talent and my skill set and what I've been working on for years. Let me show you that. And if I get it, I get it. And if I don't, I don't. Make some connections, make some friends along the way, enjoy the ability to dance, the option to dance. Take it, go home, see what we can work on, do it again. Focusing on trying to win versus actually winning. And so that's my perspective. You don't have to agree. You don't have to apply it. If you're like, no, I like focusing on the end goal, go right ahead. But I share this because it's worked for me thus far, and I can imagine how that will continue to work for me in years to come, as this is my lifelong goal, lifelong plan. I'm in this for the long haul, and I don't want to get to a place where I feel burnt out and that I hate dance and that I hate all of these things and then quit. I'm not doing it. Not doing it. I quit one time. I'm not doing it again. I am in this for the long haul. So if you are as well, I would encourage you to take this approach, see how it applies to what you were doing, and see if it makes a difference for you as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I appreciate you all. Sometimes when we listen to episodes, a friend comes to our mind and we're like, oh, I just talked to that person about this the other day, right? Or if you're talking about something and you're like, oh, I could have used this perspective, it can be really helpful. So share this to anybody that comes to mind when you're thinking about the process of enjoying dance rather than focusing on the end goal. Don't forget that you can leave us a rating. Let us know how you're liking it or not liking it. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully you are enjoying it. Let me know what you would like to see more of or less of, any topics that you really would love for me to talk about. I do have a whole list of things I plan on talking about, but feel free to let me know what is on your mind, and maybe it's something that I can talk about if I feel like I have the perspective and some knowledge and experience to speak on it. So keep me posted, leave a comment, message me, whatever you want to do, let me know. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much again, and I will see you all in the next episode.